I wasted 8 hours watching this show and now I have thought. Hello, beautiful people of the internet. My name is Tasmia and I am a poet, playwright, and a YA novelist. I'm currently supposed to be writing my South Asian inspired YA romantasy, so naturally I spent my bank holiday Monday binge watching Netflix's Heeramandi because research is the best procrastination. Well, I wouldn't say I was disappointed because I went in with rather low expectations, as frankly all the recent big budget Bollywood blockbusters were based on paper thin stories, but my goodness, how painful was it to watch the potential of this show get squandered over and over. My writing brain went into overdrive as I watched this, so let us try and fix Heeramandi's writing. And I say us because this is a collab between you and me, so please leave a comment or more than one comment sharing your thoughts and ideas. And of course, if you disagree with my ideas as well, please let me know, because art is subjective and we bring all our own experiences into our interpretations. Also, ahead lies spoiler territory, so cross only if you don't mind being spoiled for Heeramandi, as well as the following on your screen. My first problem with Heeramandi is the lack of an overarching thematic coherence. The show is trying to say so many things: power, politics, freedom, art, love, rebellion. And yet there just doesn't seem to be a cohesive through line. The show with its beautiful Azadi song was trying to give us an impression of a theme, but that theme just does not seem to take place across the story, which is why by the time we reach the climax, it just doesn't feel earned. The show has the character of Alamzeb trying to break free from the fate of becoming a Tawayif, a dancing girl like her mother and her sister, and other women in her family. Meanwhile, the subcontinent's struggle for freedom from colonial rule also forms the backdrop of the show. So I would start there. Make the struggle for emancipation and self-determination run parallel, which, to be fair, the show does attempt to do, but instead of telling it in the dialogues, I would make it a more active demonstration, imbuing it into the characters and character arcs. This video is not critiquing the dialogue because I think the dialogue is really well written and absolutely beautiful. However, it is the screenplay and the way the characters interact with each other that I'm more interested in, and hopefully we'll be able to develop the characters a little bit more in my version. So let's start with the character of Tajdar. He is a young Nawab, an elite who is London educated.
London nahi Abbu, Oxford.
Yeah, okay, whatever. So from the start, Tajdar is seen parroting dialogues about how the country needs to belong to the people and not the colonial rulers. So when he does become a rebel, it kinda doesn't come as any surprise. There is no arc. So my first material change therefore would be to give Tajdar a character arc. He already has the bones of this in place, so let's make him a more full-fledged Englishman. In his first scene, he comes to see his grandmother. By the way, love Farida Jalal, she is such a pleasure to watch. Tajdar is, however, behaving strangely when he sees her. He refers to her by her first name and also says good evening instead of salam to the guests, and he is dressed in a full English suit. He even dismisses Heeramandi as being obscene, so in the next scene, I would make him double down on that. Make him speak about how taking the law job would be a really good way for him to serve his masters. This would then make his transformation into a rebel and his eventual demise in the show a much more satisfying arc. And his father can also be on the same side as him, as a man who doesn't want to rock the boat, which would again play into the overall conflict as he, as a younger person with new ideas, faces off against the old ideas of his father. Alamzeb would be the catalyst for the change in Tajdar's character from the start, when he sees her listening to poetry and starts to appreciate his heritage, to seeing the rebellion in action when he's trying to save her outside the bookshop, and eventually that love for the individual transforming into the love for the collective would thereby create a satisfying character arc. Now let's speak about Alamzeb. I'm not going to go into the acting. Enough is already being said about this, and this TikTok which my friend sent actually made me want to make this video in the first place. But from a purely writing perspective, Alam's character is actually the most coherent. She has goals, misbeliefs, obstacles. I would heighten that conflict of personal emancipation with the collective struggle. Alamzeb, for starters, would be the one to start singing Hame Dekhni Hai Azadi, and even before that, she would be shown composing the words without any music. After the scene outside the bookshop, once she's got her new notebook, we would see her crafting her first nazm, which would be this song. She would have heard the term Azadi being spoken by the protesters, but for her the term would only mean her own personal emancipation. The dialogue and the funeral scene can remain the same, but instead of Malika Jan starting her dance, which by the way may well have been a khilji in his bathtub, like seriously, someone needs to do academic research on the impact of Ranveer Singh on Bollywood period drama villains, because post Padamavat, every villainous Raja has the same mannerisms. Back to Heeramandi, instead of Malika Jan. In my version, it's Alamzeb who sings. And yes, in my version, the actor who is playing her would have a wider range of expressions. So yes, when she sings, it breaks hearts all around. Speaking of broken hearts, my second major change would be to stretch out the Lajjo Zoravar track. Like, seriously, why would you waste a talent like Raju Chadda by featuring her in only 2 episodes? I still think the funeral scene is in the right place for the story, but it would be someone else, maybe an older Tawayef instead of Lajjo. I would repeatedly contrast the sunny and happy scenes of Tajdar and Alamzeb falling in love more and more with scenes of Lajjo becoming more and more heartbroken. I would also avoid showing Zoravar's face until the wedding scene, and I will explain this further in the video. Now imagine the tension and foreboding the audience would feel when you see the innocent Alamzeb falling in love with the hero who hates her country and her people, while simultaneously watching another poor soul sink deeper and deeper into depression as a result of her love for another Nawab. The conversation between Lajjo and Bibbo, for example, would become 2 different scenes. The first would be with Alam, as they both talk about love, and Lajjo boasts about all the things that Zoravar got her. And then we have the eventual real reveal with Bibbo. The scene at the cafe would also have Lajjo act completely delusional with a random man. We would show his face though, as that would be a red herring. But yes, she would eventually get her kicked out and have that dramatic scene of her banging on the window. I would also have the eventual wedding scene in episode 6, which would again make us worry about Alamzeb as she waits for her wedding, and again contrast these 2 weddings. Also, I wouldn't kill off Lajjo, rather I would give her the story that Saima got, making her this big time singer, because we're not letting a man take away a woman's dignity, happiness and craft. She would be my phoenix, and she would obviously return in the final scene with the rest of the girl gang, as she's now a celeb and with her own record, and she would also be followed by a horde of news reporters, because that's how she would be using her newfound platform. Now let's come to Zoravar and his crazy parentage, and specifically how I would use him to add tension to this story, because I absolutely hated the way they wrote Malika Jan. Unpopular opinion, I know, but I think she was the weakest character. Not actor, Manisha Koirala did a fab job with the material she had, but the writing was so poor. Malika Jan had no arc. She was, as she says herself, a bad mother, bad sister, bad lover and bad person. And her actions just had no internal logic. Like in the scene when she's informed that Alamzeb has been taken by the police, first she has this whole like snide remark, then the next scene she's going to the police station and sacrificing herself to save her child. She just changes with the flip of a switch, and that is just not satisfying. I would bring layers to her character instead by contrasting the different roles she's been forced to play. The mother, the lover, the sister, and of course the hukum of this whole world that she's creating. Side note, if Malika Jan is supposed to be the most important person in that area, who's that other lady they go to when they try to resolve their problems with Faridan? Like, why is there another authority in that space if Malika Jan is supposed to be the most important person in this story? Ugh, the writing. One of my absolute favorite portrayals of a complicated mother-daughter relationship was in Anvita Dutt directed Qala. Qala's mother is strict, unloving, but also the reason for this is very complex. She wants Qala to get the respect that she herself didn't, and she also suffers from a sustained trauma at the loss of Qala's twin. In the patriarchal world of that film, the loss of the male child had left her deeply scarred, and she eventually fills that hole by adopting Jagan and supporting his singing career. You should totally go watch that film, by the way. It's amazing. And Netflix, just please give Anvita Dutt a budget like Heeramandi, because she would produce absolute magic. She did it with Bulbul, she did it with Qala, and she would totally create magic again. Back to Heeramandi. I would give Malika Jan a similar character arc, making one aspect of her character be the constant search for her son. I would have her looking at Tajdar at the party with affection, which he would obviously misunderstand because he was still in his earlier anti-Desi era. I would also show Malika Jan searching for her son more openly, like making Ustad. What a breakout performance by Imresh Malik, by the way. Anyway, Malika would ask them about her son. She would also say things like only a son is his mother's honor, as the girls need to be Thawayef or something like that. That would all also feed into Bibbojan's arc as we see her working with the revolution, as she is also trying to bring honor to her people. Slight tangent, I would also not change much in Bibbojan's story, as that is the most thematic, but I would make it so that Malika is aware of her actions from the start. Malika doesn't necessarily approve of the rebellion, but should at least be aware of it. She would know that Bibbo takes some of her earnings to donate to the cause, and Malika would confront her, which would eventually lead to Bibbo standing up to her. It would also create a nice mini arc around that last performance situation in the middle of the show. Coming back to Malika and Zoravar. Now, this is going to sound full Game of Thrones, but I would have a whole narrative thread of Malika finding out one of the Nawabs is her son, but not knowing which one. As a result, she tried to stop Alamzeb from getting close to any of the young Nawabs, which again would give the conflict between the mother and daughter a solid philosophical reasoning. This idea was partially inspired by a line in Margaret Atwood's Testaments, which is the sequel to her seminal work, The Handmaid's Tale. In the Testaments, it is revealed that the aunts, the women who are working with the establishment to subjugate the handmaids, keep a thorough record of every child being born due to the complex genealogy where the mothers are handmaids forced to serve different commanders. In Heeramandi, this idea can be similarly used to create tension and intrigue about Zoravar reveal, which in the actual show just came out of nowhere and dissipated without any impact. I would instead make this a key subplot. I would also include the eventual roundtable of the Nawab scene much earlier, maybe in a way to show Tashdar's father trying to influence the other Nawabs or something, but in that scene I would have at least one moment of Zulfikar realizing that Nawab Zoravar is the mirror image of his younger self. This would be the eventual reason why Malika Jan realizes who her son is. Fun fact, Adyan Suman, who plays Zoravar, also plays young Zulfikar in the show, and he is the actual son of Shekhar Suman, who plays the older Zulfikar. Doing the reveal at his wedding with the additional flower Shehra to cover his face would add further drama to the scene. And now finally, the antagonist, Faridan. I saved her for the last because Sonakshi Sinha absolutely ate this role, and she made the subpar writing feel so much more impactful. But my biggest gripe with Heeramandi is also associated with that poor writing. I would write Faridan very differently. She would not reveal herself so quickly. Rather, she would haunt Malika like a ghost of her mother. And no, not in a cheesy way. Faridan would be among the mourners, and that would terrify Malika Jan. And in her second appearance in the court, Malika Jan losing the case for the Kwabka, which Faridan would take over, revealing herself. From here on, the murder mystery plot can just play out as it does in the actual show. But more importantly, in my story, Faridan would be the complete opposite of what Heeramandi represents. She would be dressed in gowns, not shararas, and she would have no classical training in music or dance. She would be the symbol of the westernized modernity, directly clashing with the traditional craft of the area. That contrast would be extra apparent when the Nawabs avoid her party and go to Bibo Jan's mujra. But then eventually she wins with her song, which was so different from the rest of the album anyway. This would also help bring out the character of Heeramandi itself as a place instead of just being a mere set. Because I was so unimpressed with the lack of Kathak dancers in the show. As a former Kathak dancer myself, it was so sad to see the main leads rarely dance, except for Aditi and in one scene, Sanjita Sheikh playing Wahida. The beauty of Sanjay Leela Bhansali movies is that they have these iconic Kathak scenes like the two from Devdas, the ones in Bajirao Mastani, and it was so disappointing to see so little dancing in the shows. Like the reels of Sakal Bana had more Kathak in them than the show itself. Instead of the whole Saima Bali plotline, which had so little impact in the overall story, apart from just showing Malika Jan as being this evil woman, I would actually include more scenes of the girls learning to dance and practicing their music, maybe even one-to-one dance battles. Something like a iconic dolare between like two dancers, maybe like Bibojan and Wahida, who actually seem like the two like trained dancers in the show. Just having them have that one-to-one dance battle would have been so iconic. The whole story just felt like art imitating life. Malika Jan wants her daughter to be the star, but Saima, being naturally talented, makes her insecure, so she forces her out. In reality, Shruti Sharma, who played the role of Saima, just stole the show in every scene she was in. So eventually she just disappeared from the show to give screen space to Alamzeb, played by the director's niece, Sharmin Sego. Got so much hate for this role, which was supposed to be her big break. But anyway, I would just cut all of that and instead focus on creating a distinct traditional craft of Heeramandi versus Faridan's important ideas arc. Again, the bones of this exist in the story, as Faridan is shown to be open to new technology such as the camera, while Malika Jan was not, as she was dismissing the gramophone company's offer to record Bibo's voice. So eventually, when Faridan sees the demise of Tajdar, her change of heart would also be both personal as well as thematic. And as a result, the main threads of the personal emancipation and the collective freedom struggle would come full circle with the plotline of Bibojan and the eventual ending where they all sing the Azadi song, a composition of Alamzeb symbolizing the achieving of both goals. This has been a labor of love for me, so please drop a like and a comment if you like this, and please tell Netflix to make a show out of my books so I can actually spend time writing my original stories. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope your day is as beautiful as you are.